Hey everyone, I'm Princess Link and welcome back to Metal Gear Solid 2. Chapter 21. Biden waited until the two sentries were back inside the strut and then climbed the ladder to the roof. Drawing the SOCOM, he covertly crept to the LK connecting bridge, searched carefully for signs of ciphers or planted explosives, and made his way across to the T connector for the Shell 2 core. The pathway was clear of obstacles, probably because the terrorists needed the bridge themselves. He moved quickly over the bridge, listened at the door for signs of activity, heard nothing, and slipped inside. Unbelievable, he thought. I'm in Core 2. Not having access to the Central Core's maps, he needed to find a node. Biden blindly followed the entrance passageway into a large room like 1F. It was full of air purification equipment and was a maze of pathways and blocked-off machinery. On the east side, Biden found a long corridor that led to a sealed door marked with Security Level 3. A woman stood before it, talking on the radio. The Russian, the woman he'd heard in the control room with Solidus, Snake, and the man called Ocelot. That sentence didn't make any sense. Biden quickly ducked out of sight. It is possible that the president was in the sealed room, so the operative flattened against the wall, remained still and silent, and listened. My father had some unfinished business with him, the woman said. Solidus's voice, on her radio, answered, Olga, Snake's definitely here. He's in Shell 1. Calm yourself. She turned and moved toward Biden. The operative slid along the hallway, turned a corner, and waited. We will not change the plan because of your personal feelings, Solidus said. Then screw your plan. I've been waiting for this day for 2 years, and I will send him to the bottom of the ocean, right next to my old man. The launch comes first. Damn it! She slammed her fist into the wall. Where's Ocelot? Not here. I don't trust him. Don't talk that way about one of your own. That's racist. He's not one of my own. He left my father to die, remember? Olga, we'll talk later. We need to get started on the final checks for the unit. All right, I'm headed back there. The upper connecting bridge to Shell 1's down. What about the chopper? One of the comm ops is out of action, and the other one was stolen. Take the oil fence from strut L. I'll tell my men to start pulling out. Not yet. Their retrieval comes last. The intruder's still at large. Olga said his name was Snake. What about the other man? He's got luck on his side, certainly. He survived the explosion. Listen, Olga, the code confirmation is in 1 hour. Keep the president alive until then. I know. No one gets in here. Turn the current on to be sure. Of course. There's the sound of a switch. Biden heard a crackling sound. He dared to peer around the corner. Olga stood several yards away from the sealed door, her back to Biden. She watched the floor in front of her as a trace of blue plasma rolled over it. High voltage current on, Solidus announced. The door stays shut unless the president manages to take out that circuit panel from inside the room. And it's no job for bare hands. All right, come back immediately. One more thing. What? She turned and walked toward Biden. He moved quickly down the hall and slid into an alcove. She went the opposite direction, so he stepped out and followed her around the perimeter of the floor. She eventually reached an area that was too far away for him to properly hear the conversation. He still had the directional microphone in his backpack, so he dug it out and moved parallel with her in another part of the air purification room. He aimed the mic at a partition separating them. Reception wasn't great, and he had to keep adjusting the microphone's position, but he could hear. We leave for Russia when this business is over. I won't have the money for that, the woman said. Of course, that was part of the agreement. She moved again and stood next to an elevator. Biden ducked behind a cargo box and continued to use the mic. We start living for ourselves after this. If there's anyone who wants to stay there, I want you to take good care of them. Gladly. Gurlukovich soldiers are the cream of the crop. It's time they went free. What happened to the building of Mother Russia? Solidus asked with a little sarcasm. The old man's dead. The world's a different place now. It's your life. Olga started walking again. Biden followed her past the elevator and another door marked 3 to the north side of the room. He crouched behind another partition and continued to listen. Just a reminder, I'm going to say this again, one last time. Don't try anything on us. The feeling's mutual, Olga. Biden heard her switch off the radio. Her footsteps grew fainter down the corridor, and the hatch opened and closed. She was gone. Biden quickly made his way back to the head of the electrified corridor, and then called the colonel on the codec. Yes, Biden? I'm in front of the room where they're keeping the president. Everything all right? No sign of flooding, but I can't get close to the door. The floor is electrified. Don't test it, you'll be broken. Any suggestions? Remember the shuttle motors training? Take out the circuit panel? Right. But there's no way into the room. Try ventilation ducts. Biden scanned the hallway and grinned. Yeah, I think I see one. Look for a remote control missile launcher. You can guide it through the duct into the room. And then target the circuit panel. Got it. Right, just make sure you don't hit the president. The president's wired with nanomachines. If we know the frequency, I can raise him. We've tried that repeatedly, but there's no response. Looks like the walls have a built-in radio shield. So that's why Ames lost contact with him. If you need to confirm his position, you can log into the node. Understood. But locate the missile launcher first. Easier said than done. Biden signed off and called Snake. What's up, Biden? Snake, do you know where I can find the remote-controlled missiles? I saw Nikita in a busted-up supply room on B1 on the core of Shell 2. Really? That's perfect. But be careful. Contaminated seawater is broken out of the tanks thanks to that explosion. Most of B1's probably flooded by now. Great. Biden rubbed his brow and signed off. The only way to get to B1 was to go down. Oh, the floor is made of floor. People die when they are killed. He retraced his steps to the elevator. He swiped the security card on the door marked 3 and started to look inside. But his sixth sense that he had relied upon so many times in the past kicked in. I don't know, is Biden Spider-Man now? I mean, now. Definitely not now. I don't know what I'm talking about. I mean, his voice actor was in the 90s Spider-Man cartoon. I mean, so was like half the Metal Gear cast. For some reason. Wait, where was I? Oh yeah, the spider sense. Biden halted himself and barely opened the door, just far enough to peer in. There appeared to be armaments in there, as well as a pair of gun cameras mounted on the ceiling. Biden breathed a sigh of relief. He readied the SOCOM and shot both cameras to bits. Now it was safe to enter. There was no remote-controlled rocket launcher inside, but there was a small supply of Nikita rockets themselves. Where was the firing mechanism? Snake had said he'd seen it on B1. Biden feared that the elevator wasn't damaged from all the explosions. All he needed was to step into a lift with a disabled shaft, and he was a dead man. Biden called the elevator, and it arrived with no problems. If he'd been superstitious, he would have crossed his fingers when he stepped inside and pressed the B1 button. But the ride was smooth all the way down. The doors opened, and he cautiously looked for signs of trouble before stepping out onto the wet floor. He was alone. The central core's node stood right there next to the elevator. Even though there was an inch or two of water covering the floor, Biden stooped, placed his hand on the panel, and accessed the map. Plural. It was like throwing another pair of eyes. He didn't have to fumble his way through unknown territory. Unfortunately, the plans didn't reveal the extent of the flooding. Biden stood and moved away from the elevator, and directly in front of him was a stairwell that was full of water. It was the only way to the rest of the floor, which was obviously submerged. Biden searched his pack for the oxygen module he'd used during the swim to Big Shell. It was almost empty. There was enough air for a few minutes' time. Probably not enough for the round trip. He had to put it in his mouth anyway, and resolved not to use it unless he had to. He dived into the water and swam down the stairwell and into the central core's filtration chamber. The The map on his codec indicated the direction he should travel, as long as his breath held out. The problem was that he had to take the time to search the floors, cubby holes, and alcoves for the supply closet Snake had mentioned. Floating litter and debris from the explosion also made it difficult. Vaden passed damaged equipment and an overturned electric kite. It was hard going, and the only way Vaden found it bearable was to concentrate solely on the search and not the pain in his lungs. After a couple minutes holding his breath, Vaden spotted a vertical shaft of light in the water ahead. That meant there was an air pocket on the surface. He swam toward it, ascended, and gasped lovely oxygen when he broke the water. There was an 8-inch space between the water level and the ceiling. He breathed normally for a few moments and then went under once again. The map denoted an L jog in the corridor ahead. Vaden followed it and kept going. Another minute or so passed, and he felt his lungs crying for air again. There were no light shafts in sight, so he allowed himself a breath through the oxygen module. It was enough to sustain him a little farther. The supply cabinet was at the end of the corridor. The level 3 door had been blown off. Vaden swam inside, took another breath from the module, and looked around. Sure enough, a Nikita launcher lay on one of the shelves. He grabbed it and swam back, retracing his route. He reached the L-jog when his oxygen module ran out. Vaden took one last breath, spit out the contraption, and continued. He was fine for the next minute or so, but he no longer had to take time to search for the weapon. Search for the weapon, but it was still a long way to the air pocket. His lungs began to ache during the third minute of swimming. He saw the light shaft up ahead, but the weight of the missile launcher slowed him down. His chest was in agony. Vaden pushed himself to swim just a bit further and ascend to the surface. Another few yards. He felt dizzy. Almost there. Hold it. Hold it. Vaden gasped with sweet air before he passed out. He treaded water for a full minute, resting his lungs and diaphragm. Then it was back to the elevator. After returning to 1F, the first thing Vaden did was to grab the Nikita rockets out of the Shell 3 room next to the lift. He then made his way back to the electrified corridor. The Shadow Moses VI training scenario had required him to guide a remote control missile through a jogging corridor and hit a target in a completely different room. That's what he'd have to do in this real-life case, only through a narrow air duct instead of a hallway. Vaden grabbed a crate and placed it beneath the vent in the hallway next to the electrified corridor. He stood on the box and smashed the mesh grill off the vent with the butt of his SOCOM. He then stuck the barrel of the Nikita launcher into the duct, turned on the targeting guidance system, and set his codec for the appropriate map. A heat dot represented the president's position in the locked room. According to the map blueprint, the electrical circuit panel was located on a wall to his right, directly across from the exit vent. He was safely out of the way. The duct itself had 3 sharp jogs in it. Here goes nothing, Vaden thought as he rechecked the controls and prepared to fire. The Nikita jerked, but smoothly, as it was a beautifully designed precision instrument made for ease of use on the battlefield. The missile moved quickly, of course, so Vaden had to be on top of the controls and operate them with split-second reaction. Straight, turn, straight, straight, get ready, turn, straight, straight, get ready, turn, and out. The missile broke through the exit vent, soared across the president's chamber, probably scaring the executive half to death, immediately and exploded into the circuit panel. The lights in the corridor immediately extinguished. Vaden jumped off the crate, stored the launcher in the hallway, and gingerly tested the corridor leading to the chamber. The voltage was off. Vaden rushed to the door, used the level 3 security card to open it, and stepped inside to meet the President of the United States. We can discuss my feelings on the President next time. If you like this, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!